Hollywood has never seen a duo as renowned as Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty from Gunsmoke. But the fact that they were never given the opportunity to make things official has left fans bewildered even to this day. The apparent and subtle tension between Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty was what truly drew in viewers. Miss Kitty last appeared on Gunsmoke in 1974, so it's remarkable that, after nearly half a century, new and veteran viewers alike are still tuned in to find out what happens next. You won't believe who answered. It was none other than James Arness. Therefore, let's delve deeper and uncover the truth. In 1952, Gunsmoke first aired on the radio. They set out to discover a guardian for Dodge City when they chose to adapt those thrilling tales into a television series. Thankfully, 32-year-old James Arness looked to be the center of attention. He was chosen over several other candidates, including William Conrad, who had previously voiced Marshal Matt Dillon on the radio and was actually suggested for the part by John Wayne. As a towering 6'7" man, James Arness was cast to play a variety of roles. As a W2 veteran, he truly grasped the world's hardships because he had experienced them firsthand. The writers and studio were looking for someone who could handle the anguish, and he was the one. The Marshal endured gunfire, beatings, stabbings, and even poisoning throughout Gunsmoke. James Arness was born to play this part, and he barely had to adjust his acting style to fit the part. Amy Stock, with whom he co-starred in 4 Gunsmoke films, noted the ease with which the Marshal transitioned from his off-duty persona to his on-screen persona. When she initially laid eyes on him, she remembered him sporting the coat, the Dillon hat, and his trusty tennis shoes. Even though he was still wearing his tennis shoes, the filmmakers informed him, "We're ready for you on set." He was sitting calmly in his chair. Afterwards, he removed his tennis shoes and put on his cowboy boots. With a swift motion, he mounted his horse and assumed the identity of Matt Dillon. She gushed about how well he portrayed the role. Amanda Blake was ecstatic when she was in her mid-20s and cast as Gunsmoke, a Western TV series. She worked very hard to land the role of Miss Kitty. "I was appreciative to work alongside James Arness, who played Matt Dillon's Marshal, on screen." As Miss Kitty, the proprietor of the neighborhood tavern in Dodge City, Amanda immediately won over the hearts of viewers. When the program went from black and white to color in the 1966 season, which was halfway through its existence, her appearance really stood out. With 20 seasons under its belt, Gunsmoke began broadcasting in 1955 and ran until 1975. Amanda Blake's tenure as Miss Kitty came to an end in season 19, although James Arness remained for all 20 seasons playing the role. There was clearly more going on between Matt and Miss Kitty than greeted the eye, even if the writers refrained from going into full detail throughout the series. The Minnesota city of Minneapolis was the site of Jim Arness's birth on May 26, 1923. He began his stellar career in radio broadcasting in Minnesota in 1945. He began to gain attention in the film industry after relocating to Los Angeles. The Farmer's Daughter, which he co-starred in with Loretta Young in 1947, was his breakout role. Also that year, he landed parts in several westerns. He got a huge boost to his career after appearing in the 1951 classic science fiction film The Thing. Bat Jack, the production firm owned by John Wayne, signed Jim to a contract in the early 1950s. In his 3 years there, he collaborated with Wayne on 4 films. In 1955, Jim's biggest break came when John Wayne cast him as Marshal Matt Dillon in the new TV series Gunsmoke. According to legend, when the show was being considered for the transition from radio to television, CBS first wanted Wayne to play the part. He declined, but suggested Jim as an alternative. Along with 25 other people, Raymond Burr included, CBS decided to give Jim a chance. Jim was hesitant to step into television after being cast as Dillon, but he ultimately decided to do it. Until its cancellation in 1975, Gunsmoke became the longest-running dramatic series ever, and he remained with the show for all 20 years, earning 3 Emmy nominations along the way. In addition, he was in 4 Gunsmoke TV films, the most recent of which being 1992's Gunsmoke Ivor, The Long Ride. Jim continued to pursue parts in TV westerns following Gunsmoke. One of the greatest miniseries of all time, How the West Was Won, which aired from 1976 to 1979, included him. Big Jim McLean, a police drama that ran in the early 1980s, was his final TV series. James Arness had an eventful life as an American soldier before he became renowned in Hollywood. Bronze Star, Combat Infantryman Badge, Purple Heart, and many more serious honors were among his many. Considering he was denied entry to the Navy as a fighter pilot due to his height, it is very remarkable. Nonetheless, his stature was useful to the Army. They had him measure the depth of the water as soon as he stepped off the landing ship at Anzio Beachhead in Italy on January 22, 1944. He found himself smack dab in the middle of some savage fighting barely 10 days after his arrival. While skulking through a vineyard on a dark night on February 1, 1944, he overheard screams and shouts. That was followed by an intense gun battle. A concussion grenade nearby threw him into the air as bullets sprayed around him, and heavy machine gun fire fractured his lower leg. The soldiers prevailed in the battle, but Arness's severe injuries necessitated further leg surgery once he returned to the United States. He enrolled at Beloit College and worked as a radio announcer after being honorably discharged on January 29, 1945, which led him unexpectedly into the entertainment industry. After befriending John Wayne on his hitchhike to Hollywood, he began to pursue acting roles. Arness got famous after Wayne nudged him to take on the part of Matt Dillon. He brought a compassionate and fair sense of justice to the role of U.S. Marshal Matt Dillon. Kitty Russell's character on Gunsmoke was passionate about romance rather than drama. Her real-life counterpart, actress Amanda Blake, was similarly dedicated to her craft and her deep-seated desire to save stray animals and dogs. The only child of Jesse and Louise Neal, Amanda Blake was born Beverly Louise Neal in Buffalo on February 20, 1929. She may trace her ancestry to Revolutionary War hero Kate Barry, who helped warn patriots about the British and had a role in their triumph at the Battle of Cowpens, a pivotal battle for the Yorktown victory, and who had some English and Scottish ancestry. Beverly and her family relocated to Claremont, California, while she was a high school student. She attended Pomona College after graduating from Claremont High School. However, her life began to spiral out of control when she became engrossed in community theater while still in school. As a result, she made the decision to pursue acting professionally. She immersed herself in acting in the 1940s, appearing in summer stock shows in New England and performing in Buffalo's theater and radio. She pursued her acting dreams while working as a telephone operator to keep her dreams alive. Beverly eventually arrived in Hollywood. Following her discovery by MGM, the studio had high hopes for her, dubbing her the potential successor to the 1940s Hollywood smash Greer Garson. Amanda Blake replaced Beverly Neal as her legal name because she wanted a more distinctive moniker. One of Amanda's first film roles was in Stars in My Crown. He managed to secure over a dozen film and television assignments during the early 1950s. However, she finally broke through in 1955 when she landed the role of Dodge City's Long Branch saloon owner Miss Kitty Russell. Marshal Matt Dillon, played by the then-unknown James Arness, was co-starring with her. They had a fantastic 19 years, making one of the most adored Western television series of all time. Being on set of Gunsmoke was like being with family, according to Blake. She found a sense of belonging on set, so much so that she would often spend her days off there after her first divorce in 1956. Despite a very low filmography from 1955 to 1974, she was a frequent guest star on television series such as The Love Boat, Tattletales, Match Game, The Red Skelton Show, The Dean Martin Comedy Roasts, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Jason Seymour Day became her second husband in 1964. Divorced in 1967, nevertheless. She wed Frank Gilbert, her third husband, in 1967 and remained married to him until 1982. Fans naturally assumed a relationship was developing between the two likable protagonists. Their chemistry as a couple was more than only rumor mill speculation, though. However, let's delve more into Miss Kitty and the speculation among fans over the potential reason behind the couple's decision to remain unofficial. Wild cowboys, who frequently had too many to drink, were her customers, and she served them in ostentatious costumes. Plus, she was the kind of person who could listen to their tales of cowboy life and offer sound advice whenever they needed it. Certainly not a Sunday school teacher in 1955 would have said this. This is hardly the behavior expected of a respectable woman in the Wild West. A shotgun was even stashed under Miss Kitty's bar. An incredibly fascinating pioneer woman, she was fearless in her pursuits. When it came time to hire and fire her waitstaff, she had complete control. She employed girls who were younger and a little bit bolder than herself. Are they the cowboys? They had come in from the cattle paths in search of more than simply beverages and chat. They were rough, untamed, and tough. The writers and producers of the show decided that Kitty and Matt should not display any public affection, despite the fact that they plainly had a strong relationship. Instead of dramatic expressions of love and emotion, they preferred characters with strong chemistry. As a police officer, Arness was quite remarkable. He was an effective peacekeeper, maybe not the perfect spouse, because of his accuracy with a bow and his command of large horses. After 20 years of being together, why didn't Matt and Miss Kitty tie the knot? They were clearly head over heels for each other. Did Matt feel ashamed because of Kitty? No matter how rough the men were, she could drink and shoot just as well as they could. Maybe Dillon was simply looking for a more conventional housewife. However, James Arness did discuss the reasons behind Kitty and Matt's ill-fated romance in Gunsmoke. In his autobiography, James Arness, an Autobiography, he discussed how admirers frequently pondered the enigma of Matt Dillon's stalled romance with Kitty. Fans have always wanted me to elaborate on my character Matt Dillon's romance with Kitty, he said. And the reason it never appeared to go beyond the superficial level of our romance. Amanda Blake was quite firm on the fact that her character should remain untarnished. Arness made it clear that the producer's decision was the driving force behind their connection. He noted that the producer had made that decision because continuing would have added unnecessary complexity. This might potentially reduce the show's viewership. Even if viewers don't perceive it that way, Arness argued that it could be beneficial to keep the relationship understated and somewhat ambiguous. Additionally, he mentioned that our relationship was glossed over because the producers believed it would be more exciting to let the audience fill in the blanks. Arness and Amanda Blake's platonic admiration for one another as performers shone through even in the show's off-screen antics. According to Arness, one of the reasons the show was so successful was because of the excellent casting, and she lauded Blake's choice to play Russell. In addition to being a fantastic friend, Arness praised Blake as an exceptional actress. The idea that being known as Matt Dillon's girlfriend could put Kitty in danger and that being a lawman could make enemies was a common justification that came up in the discussions. So, how exactly was their partnership supposed to work? Jim Burns, who penned 34 of the best episodes of the show, remembers that they were understated. It was never addressed, but there was an unspoken agreement that once the long branch closed and Matt Dillon put up the closed for the night sign after the fade out, he would walk upstairs. Actually, they never kissed but did engage in other romantic gestures such as hugging, teasing, and walking off with one other by their sides. James Arness was of the firm belief that the writers on the show purposefully left Matt and Kitty's connection vague. They were careful not to alter the show's fundamental character or plot too drastically. They had a lot of fan feedback requesting greater love development between the two, so it seemed like this tactic worked. The creators purposefully kept the tension at this level throughout the series in order to keep people engaged and curious. This method, in his opinion, was highly effective. The authors of Gunsmoke knew that tensions and temptations would arise between Matt and Kitty, but they weren't planning to marry them off. Ainsley Pryor, a villain from Kitty's past, challenges her allegiance to Matt and Kitty's outlaw, an episode from Season 5. Matt tries to aid orphan Mariette Hartley in Cotter's Girl and ends up the target of her passionate love. In Season 8's The Way It Is, Claude Akins makes time for Kitty while Matt neglects her. Season 12 finds Sarah playing the role of Anne Francis, a former flame of Matt's who is now running a way station for criminals and is aching to see him again. Kitty witnesses Matt's 11th gunshot in Season 15's The Badge. And I've had enough. She relocates to a new town, sells the Long Branch, and forms a partnership with Beverly Garland. It appeared that Matt and Kitty's relationship dynamics changed in 1973. Actress Miss Michael Learnt, The Waltons, portrayed Matt's romantic interest in a scenario where he experiences memory loss. They become closer, and Matt even gets a kiss from her, something he rarely does. But when Matt remembers everything, he goes back to Miss Kitty. The plot was interestingly carried over into a TV movie that came out 17 years later. Matt and Miss Learnt's character have a kidnapped child. Matt enlists the aid of a different character in his quest to find his child. Similar to the previous romantic conflict between Matt and Kitty, the other character unexpectedly shows an interest in marrying Miss Learnt's character. Miss Kitty meets a man in a later season who gets hurt shielding her from a stagecoach robbery. An emotional discussion with Matt ensues when this man proposes to her. Kitty discusses her sentiments for Matt and their shared past. In the end, she acknowledges the constraints of their circumstances, but she wonders if their connection may grow into something more. While Matt does admit to feeling this way, he ultimately lets Kitty make the call. Amanda Blake unexpectedly made her last appearance as Miss Kitty that season. She was now married and living in Arizona, but she was finding the daily journey more and more difficult, and she and producer John Mantley often had arguments. The topic of Blake's costumes was at the center of their heated argument. Mantley hadn't set aside any funds for Blake to acquire new clothes for a while, but Miss Kitty was always intended to look elegant. Mantley let her go when she insisted on getting new clothes before moving on. It was the biggest mistake I ever made, he would later admit. Not only did James have an opinion on the matter, but so did everyone else. Also, Amanda Blake claims that the creators of Gunsmoke purposefully sidestepped any romance subplot involving Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty. They were concerned that introducing romantic elements might detract from the show's Western theme and turn off some viewers. Blake made a lighthearted reference to the classic Western trope that male heroes care more about their horses than ladies, giving everyone the impression that Dillon's affection with Kitty was far stronger than his relationship with his horse. She elaborated on how the show's creators aimed to make Gunsmoke accessible to people of all ages by capturing the spirit of the Wild West. Romance was severely limited due to the heavy emphasis on historical details. Since the show didn't actually depict any obvious romantic moments between Kitty and the Marshal, Blake invited viewers to envision the possibility of a romance between the two. The final season aired in 1979, marking the end of the series. Arness went on to star in a number of other TV shows and films, including the police drama McLean's Law, a How the West Was Won series, and the Alamo 13 Days to Glory, where he played Jim Bowie. On the other hand, John Mantley brought Amanda back for the first of the TV films in 1987 when the Gunsmoke family reunited. Return to Dodge, Gunsmoke, written by Jim Burns.